Hey guys, I've just played one of the most fascinating games in my chess career. It was pure art, it was craziness, it was madness. I'm very impressed with both my play and the play of my opponent. So let me show you this game. There will be very many variations that I will show you. It's like the tip of the iceberg, the moves that we made. They were impressive, but what was behind the sea surface, the variations that we calculated in our minds while thinking, that's even more impressive. And quick spoiler, I made 3 brilliant moves in this game, but this didn't help me win. So let me show you the game. So I'm playing a talented Kyrgyzstani junior called Turksoy Jean Polat. He's rated around 1950, I think, a little bit more than me, and he's also a junior, which means that he is underrated. And he's also a junior from Kyrgyzstan, which means that he is crazily underrated because people here have rating deflation. So, of course, it's a very impressive opponent. But I play aggressively as usual, and you will see some of my sacrifices in this game. So I play with white, I open up with one e4, and we get the Sicilian defense. Here, usually, black, if black plays e6 against knight c3, the close Sicilian, black usually continues with d5, and I know some variations there, but my opponent chose a non-standard approach. He developed like this, which is also perfectly fine. The computer gives equality to black. And here I didn't know the theory in this variation, and I decided to improvise, and I decided to play aggressively. h4. I decided to provoke h5, and this is what he did, because now I get the g5 square. So pawns don't go backwards. He will not be able to kick me if I go to g5 with my bishop or maybe knight. And I've, in my turn, weakened g4, but he cannot get to g4 easily, because if he goes to f6 with his knight, I will pin him with my bishop, and the knight will not be able to go to g4 easily. And this bishop will never get to g4, well, in near future, because the pawns obstruct its way. So this is why I thought that h4 and h5, this inclusion favors me. A little bit subtle maybe, but that's what I decided. Actually, the best move here was knight f6. He didn't do that. And here I was seriously considering going h5 and sacrificing the rook for the knight. And I thought this, probably the computer will hate this, but I will have some practical chances to attack him. You know, Garry Kasparov once said that he liked sacrificing his rook for a knight in the Sicilian on the c3 square, this square. Playing with black, he often sacked a rook from c8 on c3. And he said in one of his interviews in Russian that, well, a rook is a piece, a knight is a piece in the opening. It doesn't matter if you are down a rook for a knight, it matters that you are attacking. So I try to use a similar approach. Unfortunately here it doesn't really work, because knight d4 is powerful, and here black is a little bit better, but still it would be an interesting sacrifice. But it did not occur on the board. Instead of going knight f6, he went h5, and my provocation worked. Now I got the g5 square. So I go knight to e2, and I put my bishop on this powerful outpost. He goes rook b8. He clearly wants to go b5. I don't want to allow him that, so I go a4, preventing b5. He goes a6. He says, I insist. I say, okay, I castle. He goes b5. I take. And the inclusion of a4, a6 favored me, because now this file is open and my rook on the a file is active. More active than his rook, because his rook sees just 2 squares, well, 3 if we count the pawn, whereas my rook sees the whole file. So I was comfortable in this position. Unfortunately, here I missed a nice shot that I could have executed here. Knight d5. This is a standard combination in the Sicilian. For some reason, I didn't even think about it here. Turns out that white is better, not winning, but pleasantly better, plus 0.7. Because if black takes, white takes, and this knight is hanging, and also next I can go d6, and this knight is pinned, which is where the bishop on g5 serves an important role. So here the best move for black is going f6, but I just retreat, and still it's unpleasant for black. This sacrifice works according to the computer. Well, I didn't see that. Neither of us saw that. So instead of sacking the knight, I just went queen d2. But I sacked many other pieces in this game, you will see. So he castles here, and I go bishop to h6 because I want to trade off this powerful bishop on g7. It's the pride of black's positions, because this bishop is much more active than any other piece of black. So I want to trade it and also weaken the dark squares around the black king. So before I take, of course, if black takes the knight, I take back and I'm winning. So black takes the bishop. And here I retreat to a4, pressuring the c5 square. He protects it, and I go d4, blowing open the center. Actually, the computer is not impressed with my plan, but I was very impressed with myself at this moment. I was like, I'll blow open the center. If he takes, I take. If he takes, I take with check, utilizing the fact that his king is on g7. And if he retreats, for example, I go rook d1, I pressure this pawn, and already I'm much better. So turns out e5 is good for black here, but I thought I'll just drop back and this will be a weakness, a weak square. So maybe I don't understand chess, but he didn't go for that. Also, I calculated bishop a6. I thought it's a sensible move. And here I wanted to go d takes, and rook d1, sidestepping the spin. My arrows are horrible, but you get the idea. This is a round equal. But he didn't go for that. He went for takes, and instead of taking on d4, which is the best move according to the computer, he went to e5. Also quite sensible. Also, I have to say that I had to calculate while going d4. I calculated c4, another response, and I wanted to go d5 here, blowing the center again. And then I wanted to go knight d4. This is what I calculated. So you see how many variations a chess player has to calculate while sitting at the board if he is good. Well, I'm not a grandmaster, but I'm a candidate master. I'm somewhat good, so I can calculate. So I have to calculate a lot of things, and really the brain works in full power mode, turbo mode. So this is what's happening during a chess game. So I calculated all that, but he didn't go for that. He went for 95, surprising me with this move. I added some more pressure on the d file, potentially eyeing this pawn. He goes queen c7, and I go knight f3. I drop back. I offer an exchange because I'm not against this exchange. After this exchange, this pawn will hang, and he will have to defend it with rook d8, for example. And here I wanted maybe to go for an attack with queen g5, maybe not now, but later, threatening this. Or I also was thinking about going e5. And after d5, going queen g5. Same idea. So I'm threatening bishop takes h5, and also queen f6, and also maybe later on I could rotate the rook. Maybe I could go g4. Lots of ideas for attacking. But this did not happen again. He did not take on f3. He went knight c4, to which I replied queen d4 check. I provoke e5, and then I drop back. So the idea is that now this square is weak. And also this pawn is weak, and it will never go forward because it's a backwards pawn. So strategically, I'm doing very well. This knight is badly positioned, so I have to activate it somehow, but otherwise my position is great. Here he goes bishop g4. Also surprising me, I was expecting bishop d7, and I was calculating some lines here. I thought that b3 would be the best move. And if he takes, of course I cannot take with the rook because he forks the house on b2. This is the idea of bishop d7, to take the knight that is protecting the b2 square. But I can take with the pawn here, and if he goes here, I have queen takes d6, and I'm better. So this is what I calculated. Also, the computer says this is also fine, taking the knight, but I didn't like this position. So he did not go bishop d7, he went bishop g4. Also a logical move, by the way. I go b3, and now he has to go to a3, which is a clumsy decision, because otherwise, if he goes to b6, for example, I take this pawn, and I'm up a pawn. So he has to go here, so that if I takes, he takes here, and he's fine. Rook c1, for example, he can take, and then put the bishop here, put the knight here. So, of course, I don't want to allow that. And here I was feeling really optimistic about my position because I found this great idea, c4, completely preventing him from going back and preventing him from going forward, because those squares are also covered. So his knight is stranded. My knight one could say, is also stranded, but it's not, because it can retreat and then go to the ideal d5 square. So it has the way to activate. It will take time, but still. Whereas his knight has no way to activate. This is, I thought I'm close to winning here, actually, after c4. I also thought maybe I can go c3 undermining this knight, because if he takes, for example, I'll take the knight. But here I decided that he has a clever idea of knight b5. And apparently this is what he wanted to do. And if I take, yes, I'm up a pawn, but he still can take and put the knight on d4, and these pawns will fall, and this knight is greatly positioned, so that would be bad. So c4 is much better. Again, he cannot take en passant because the knight will be hanging, and the knight is stranded. So here he tries to defend, first of all, this pawn because it was hanging. I go rook c1, controlling the c2 square so that this knight will never go here, because the queen maybe will need to leave this square, and then the rook will control this. So he wants to put the knight on d4, but I'm fine with that. He trades, he puts it on d4, and here I prepared a sacrifice of the rook. Rook takes d4. It's the best move according to the engine. Actually, it's a brilliant move. The first brilliant move according to chess.com's engine. I sacrifice a rook for a bishop and a pawn. Here I get a bishop and a pawn for a rook, but it's important that his knight is completely stranded. So he's in check, he draws back, and here I should have just gone queen d2. This is what I should have done, and he cannot go back with the knight. The computer surprisingly finds defensive resources for black, rook d to c8. So now he wants to go knight b5, because if I take, he'll take my rook. But here I would have gone rook d2, and here the computer finds a great sacrifice. Knight takes, sacrificing the knight for 2 pawns, because the knight was useless anyway. And here the computer gives equality to black. Interesting. Even if I take this pawn, by the way, because there is queen b3, and this knight is not feeling well. Wow, wow, interesting. I didn't see that. Initially, I actually was intending to go to d2 with my queen, but I decided that I'll do it later. I'll decide that I'll go knight b2, because I need to activate my knight. Then I will activate it, putting it on the great outpost on d5. This was my idea. So I decided I'll go knight b2, and if he goes queen c5, for example, trying to trade, I'll drop back, and then I will activate like this or like this. Doesn't really matter. What matters is that my knight will be impeccably placed on d5. It will be even better than any of his rooks. But unfortunately, I missed an obvious idea here. I went knight b2, and immediately he replied with knight b5, and I was like, why did I let him escape with his knight? Because if I take, he takes my rook, and this is bad. So unfortunately, I rushed with knight b2. I should have gone queen d2 first. I went knight b2, and I allowed him to escape. Now I have to drop back with my queen, and he can put the knight on c3, for example. That's one of the ideas. Or as in the game, he did. In the game, he put the knight on a7 to put it here. Why didn't he put the knight on c3? He probably didn't like knight d3, because I'm attacking the pawn, and if he protects it, I take, and then I take the knight, and I have now 2 pawns for exchange. Bishop and 2 pawns for a rook. But still, this position is around equal, by the way. So he didn't like it. He went back to a7, but this allows me activation of my knight. Look at this journey. Knight d3, knight f4. Now I want to put my knight on d5, but also I have another idea. If he goes knight a7, preventing my knight from coming to d5, I have a sacrifice, and I calculated this. Bishop takes h5. If he takes, I take with a knight, and I'm practically winning because queen g5 is threatened. And if he goes, for example, queen c5, then I go queen h6, and next knight f6 will be checkmate. So he will have to give up his queen for this knight because all the squares are taken from the black king. So that would have been impressive. And if he goes, for example, like what else can he do? He can run to h7, but then I have queen b2 and queen g7 is threatened. Rook g8 is the only defense, but then knight f6, and I'm winning here. I'm destroying him. So he saw that, and he didn't go knight e7. He went with the queen to the same square. Now the sacrifice doesn't work because he's in time to stop my attack, but I put my knight on d5. This is a great bastion outpost for the knight. He goes queen a5, and here apparently I could have sacked the bishop here as well, because he cannot take with the queen on pain of this fork, losing the queen. And if he takes with the pawn, I have queen h6, and it's a draw by perpetual check. But I really wasn't thinking about drawing. Yes, I'm down 1 point of material here, officially. I have a bishop and a pawn for a rook, but the quality of his rooks is not too high. My knight is menacing here. I'm attacking, and I thought I might be even better here. And I decided to continue attacking. And also, at this point, I didn't even see bishop takes h5, to tell the truth. So I went rook d1, because I wanted to prevent him from going either knight d4 or queen d4, exchanging the queens. If the queens get exchanged, then my attack stops, obviously. So I go rook d1. He here decides to activate the rook, which is a great decision. But this rook was controlling the b4 pawn, so he sacks this pawn. Why? Well, if I take it, then he has this, takes, and then a rook here, for example. And this pressure is not good. Or even rook here, I think, is also okay. Yes, takes, and takes. So I have a bishop and 2 pawns here for a rook, but only black is playing for a win here. I didn't want to go for this. So I did not take the pawn here. I decided, you know what, I will just improve my position by going king g2. I anticipated him going to a1, and that would lead to a pin on my rook otherwise. So he went rook a1, and here he already entered time trouble. He had like 1 minute on his clock when he made this move, and I had 20 minutes. And this is the most, the craziest part of the game, the most interesting part of the game. Here I calculated like 10 moves ahead, several variations. So when I made my move here, instead of 20 minutes, I had like 5. I spent 15 minutes calculating. So what I calculated, pay attention, this is very exciting. So first I calculated knight takes b4, which is a logical move because why not take a pawn? But he can take the rook here, and I can take with my bishop, because otherwise if the queen takes, then the queen loses contact with this knight and I lose the knight, so I have to take with the bishop. He takes, and he can take this pawn, and I block. So this is what I calculated, but I decided I don't like this position. Yes, I've won a pawn. Oh no, I didn't win a pawn actually. I gave up one on e4 and I've won one on b4. So I'm still down 1 point of material here. And yes, my knight now, my bishop is now more active. But still, I won't win this. I can only lose this, I thought. Also, the computer says black shouldn't even take this pawn, giving me scope for this bishop, because it will be activated like this. No, black can just go rook a8, activating the rook and attacking me, and black is much better, minus 0.8. So it turns out it was the correct decision not to go for this. So this is the first line I calculated. Then I calculated rook takes a1, queen takes, and knight b4. And of course, if he takes, I take with the queen and I'm fine, but he has this queen a5, which I saw pinning me. I cannot take him because I will lose my queen. But here I saw from afar, queen d5. Great move. The only move actually for white here. So if black takes the knight, black loses the queen. Therefore, the logical move would be to take the knight with the queen. But then I take his knight. He can take the pawn. And here, this is all what I was calculating. I calculated e5. Turns out the computer approves. It's the top engine move because, well, he has to take. And I go bishop d5. And suddenly my bishop is not worse than his rook because I'm now threatening queen takes g6 check because this is a pin. The bishop is like a wooden shield in the center of the board, as Hikaru Nakamura likes to call it. And here I thought I'm, well, maybe not better, but at least I have sufficient counterplay for a draw. And the computer agrees. For example, if he goes king g7, actually, I didn't see that. I stopped at this point in my calculation during the game, but the computer gives a perpetual check here in this variation. Check. He has to go to e8 to protect the rook. So then I take on e5, check, and he cannot escape the checks. The checks are always there. And in order not to lose the rook, he will allow the perpetual check. So I did not calculate this till the very end, but I was quite confident that this position should be fine. Queen d3 is another way to protect the g6 square from my queen, but then I have queen c7, and actually rook f8 is too passive. I will not lose this position. I will take another pawn. So the best move for black here is taking, giving back some material, but this is an easy draw. 4 versus 3 in the queen endgame on the same flank is an easy draw. If this pawn is here, for example, then it's possible to win this. Magnus won this against Fabiano, a similar endgame recently in Norway chess. But this is an easy draw when the pawns stand together. So this is what could have happened. But I decided against this again. Why? Why didn't I do that? Because this is a nice variation. Because I thought that, yes, I can do all that. I can takes, queen a5, queen d5, but he is not obliged to take here. He can take here. I should take with my knight, and then he has rook b8, attacking my b3 pawn. The only way to defend it is bishop d1, and then knight a5 wins one of those pawns. This is what I calculated. I'm really proud of my calculation in this game. It didn't help me win, unfortunately. Well, you will see what happened next. But I calculated like a computer. I calculated all this. Wow, I'm still impressed. So if b4, then knight takes. And this endgame is bad for me. So he'll take either this one or that one. And I will be suffering throughout that endgame. So I decided against this. And then I saw something else. I saw that I can take on a1. He takes on a1. And I take on h5. A bishop sacrifice. That was possible, by the way, a couple of moves ago. I was showing it to you, but now I saw it. So if he takes, I have queen h6. And I'm threatening knight f6 checkmate. So he can defend like this. But then I have a perpetual check. 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 And he cannot escape, because if he escapes with the king, then I take his queen. So it's a perpetual check. And I decide, you know what? Okay, I'll go for this variation. I'll go for a draw. Okay, whatever. I took on h5. Actually, it's another brilliant move according to chess.com's engine. And he didn't want to draw. He didn't take my bishop. He dropped back with his queen to e5. And now the game continues. I go queen h6. Actually, the chess.com's engine again says it's a brilliant move, although it's not the only move in this position. Maybe it's a glitch in the chess.com's algorithm, because I wouldn't say that this is the third brilliant move in the game. I would consider 2 moves of the game not more brilliant, but still. Okay, so the idea is if he takes with a queen, this is a fork, and he loses the queen. So of course it's bad. If he takes with a pawn, then knight f6 is almost a checkmate. The only defense is taking the knight, and then I'm up a queen and I win. So it's bad. but he doesn't have to take. Also, what he can do here is take here, but then I block. And I decided I'll have a great position here because, yes, I've sacked a pawn, but now my bishop is more active. And if he drops back, I go h5, for example. The computer gives some advantage to white in this position. So he decided not to take. He decided to go knight e7, which is actually a top engine recommendation. I drop back, he takes, and we get into this endgame where I have a bishop and 2 pawns for a rook, but my bishop is a little bit passive, but my queen is active and his king may get vulnerable, but his rook might get activated and attack my king, and my king might get vulnerable. So let's see what happens next. Here we both have around like 30 seconds. Every move, 30 seconds get added to our clocks. So we play 20 more moves. We play it on increment, just having 30 seconds per move. It's like blitz or rapid chess, something in between. So he goes rook a8, trying to activate the rook. I go h5, trying to destroy the cover of his king because this is important to create some counterplay. He goes back, I take, he takes. Actually, he was intending, I saw his hand, he was intending to take with a pawn. That would have been great for me because then I would have gone bishop g4 with the idea of bishop e6 check, and that would be practically a checkmate. So he would have to go rook e8 and sacrifice the rook for this bishop. And this position is much better for white. This is a winning endgame, actually, the computer says. Wow. But he didn't see that, or he saw that finally, and he didn't take with the pawn, he took with the queen. And here I decided, of course, against trading the queens, because I decided this endgame probably is losing or close to losing for me. So I dropped back, he goes rook a1, activating, and here I made a mistake. I should have gone c5. This is the most important thing in this position, trying to create some counterplay. If he takes, for example, d6 is winning for white. He cannot stop my pawn. So he has to go like queen b1 here, and there will be a perpetual check, 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 check. And if he blocks, then I just go back, and again, I want to push the pawns, or like this, probably like this. And we can repeat moves, and again, this will be a perpetual. But I didn't do that. In this position, I did not go c5. Don't blame me, I had like 30 seconds. I decided, you know what, I'll take this pawn. I don't see anything bad about it. And turns out, this is a blunder. I hung mate in 10. And he used that. He went queen h6. Suddenly, mate in 1 is threatened. I go g4, which is the only defense. And here, he spared me. He did not find a mate in 4. Mate in 4 in this position. Can you find it? Pause the video if you want to find it. 1, 2, 3. The right move is rook h1. And this is a checkmate that's threatened, and there is no defense. If I don't know, even if I take here, sacrificing my queen, he can give me this checkmate. So if I go here, this is a checkmate. So he didn't see it, neither did I. Honestly, I didn't see it. I thought that the right move here is queen h1 check. This is what he did, actually. So I go up, he checks me again, he checks me again, and he's better, but there is no checkmate on the board here. He has many checks. He has a perpetual check, of course, here. And we repeat position 2 times. Here I thought he will agree to a draw, but he didn't. Repeat the 3rd time, he went rook b1, and the computer gives equality here, but it's very difficult to play this with white with seconds on the clock. He's harassing my king from all sides of the board, but I find some good moves. Queen c3 is the best move. Now, b4 is not the best move. Here, I wanted desperately to find some counterplay to activate this pawn chain, maybe to advance further, and maybe I could even trick him and win, but b4 was not the right approach. The right approach would be here, king d3. Don't ask me why. I don't even understand it now, but that would be a draw. b4 gives some advantage to black. He goes check, I go king d3 now. He goes queen a7, again, not the most precise move. Now I have a draw with queen f6, but with seconds I didn't see it. So the idea obviously is a perpetual check on those squares, and he cannot escape. But I decided c5. pushing the pawns, I decided that this is my chance to create counterplay, maybe even to try to play for a win. But my king is too exposed. He goes queen a2 and he's threatening this, winning my queen. So I have to go up with my king. My king is on a journey. He goes rook b3 attacking my queen. And here first I thought I'll go queen e1 and that would be losing. I didn't see at the time why it's losing, but I didn't like this for some reason. But let me show you the variation. Queen e1, he has queen a3 attacking both the bishop and the pawn. I can try this because if he takes here, I have d7 and it will be actually a win for white. But he is not obliged to take here. He can take on b4 with check me on f6. This is a computer line. If I take, then he takes with check. So I have to go king e6. Then he has rook b8. Now my bishop is hanging and this is hanging with a queen. So I have to block with bishop e4. And then he has a check. And queen takes d6 and he threatens rook e5 or queen e5, so I have to go queen c3, and here he has queen h2 and he is winning. This is the computer line. Probably we both wouldn't have found it and we would have made some mistakes, but probably he would have won this variation because my king is too exposed. So that's what would have happened, could have happened had I gone queen e1, but in time trouble I decided why not go queen d4, because if he checks me, I'll run and it's gonna be okay. Probably it's not actually gonna be okay, but I thought it's gonna be okay. But he checked me from b1 and suddenly I realized that it slides out because I cannot escape to the third rank because I'm cut off. I cannot escape to f5 because the queen controls that square. The only escape square is f4, but he just takes. And here I resign because I lose my queen and the game. Tragic, but it was a fascinating game. You know, I'm more of an artist in terms of chess. I like beautiful games with lots of creative stuff happening over the board. So when I lose a game like that, yes, I'm sad about the result, but I'm happy about the process. At least something to be happy about. Still, there are 3 more rounds to go in this tournament. I'm on 3 out of 6 points. I'll try to do my best in the remaining rounds. Looking forward to some words of support from you in the comments, to me and to my dog, Charlie. See you in the next one. Bye-bye.